All right, and we are live with another episode of Mentor Minutes. This is your chance to ask some questions about real world situations that you're dealing with out there in leadership. And for those of you just listening in, it's a chance for you to kind of exercise your leadership mind with some practical application of theory and principles. That's the whole purpose of these sessions. So before I answer any questions live, and as we queue up some people live here, I'm going to handle some of the things that I dealt with, or some of the things that I received either through email or through private messaging on Facebook, and I did receive a few of those after yesterday's session. The first one is in regards to how do you motivate a staff to not leave for higher paying jobs, and really that's part of the answer right there. In a lot of cases, in most cases, people won't jump to another role, another organization, another even department for a pay increase if you're satisfying them in their job role right now. So it really does get back to motivation. So if you want to retain more employees, what can you do to make the job more satisfying? And one of the most important things that you can do as a leader, and any leader can do this, is start engaging with the team. When you are asking the team for advice on how to run the operation, for thoughts on ideas, when you run with those ideas, when you question them more, they start taking more ownership in the operation. Hassam, great to see you here. And when they take that ownership, they're less apt to leave for something as simple as money. Money can be a motivator, don't get me wrong, but it is rarely the top motivator, and it rarely pops up even in the top three when you see study after study. Things like intrinsic desire to do a good job. Recognize people when they do a good job. We talked yesterday a lot about putting everybody's performance up on the board so everybody can see it. They're getting then peer reinforcement for having a great sales day. Other things, team aspects, team building, your coworkers. When you think back to your line level jobs, what was the thing that you were going to miss about moving on from a particular company or organization? It was the people that you worked with. So find ways to foster more teamwork. Instead of handing out a particular task to one person, hand it out and give 2 or 3 people the responsibility of working on it together. That helps that team environment. But there's a number of ways that you can incentivize people to stay that don't involve money. And so if you find that you are losing a lot of your team because they are jumping to jobs with better pay, they are either not telling you the truth, assuming there's not a huge pay discrepancy here. If it's modest, 10%, 15%, you can often overcome that. Look for different ways of making the work environment more satisfying. Yes, having fun is a huge aspect of that as well, but really look for those deep-seated things like ownership over the job. Management listens to me when I bring up concerns to them. Make sure you're listening to your team. Those are different ways that you can encourage people to stay, make your organization generally happier, and happier workers are almost always more productive than unhappy ones. So that's the business case for spending the extra time and effort on this. Edna, great to see you popping on here as well. Anybody who's jumped on, if you have any questions, concerns, any situations you're dealing with at the job, this is the place to ask about those. So drop them down into the comment section and I will just handle them in real time. In the meantime, I do have a few questions that came in through private messaging on Facebook and then through email as well. CM at Cameron Morrissey. If you ever don't want to throw up the question here, you can drop it in down in my inbox through email. Second question I have, and I just kind of have them written on a notepad here, is that she feels like she's putting out fires all the time and wants to grow herself and grow her team. And that's a reality for most people in most positions that they're in. You are never going to get your to-do task taken care of. You are never going to get everything off of your to-do list. So it comes back to priorities. And what happens in leadership a lot is those priorities that you started out with change as the day goes on, as this emergency pops up and this situation pops up in the organization, and you get brought into these things. And that's where that putting out fires comes in. So there's a couple of things. If you find that you're spending your time running around without any organization, I want you to work on 2 things. First, I want you to spend the first 15 minutes of your day with the door closed to your office, not opening up email, working on your priorities. One of the main reasons that people don't get more accomplished, and I talk about this all the time, you're driving into work, you've got those 3 things that you want to take care of. You walk through the door, say hi to a few people, open up email, and then you find when you're leaving at the end of the day, you didn't accomplish anything that you set out to do. And this is the reason. You open up email or you start talking to people over coffee, and all of a sudden their priorities supersede your priorities. When you open up your inbox in the morning, you're immediately making your priorities subservient to everybody else's. So spend just 15 minutes. Hey, the world isn't going to end in 15 minutes, and if there's an emergency, I guarantee they will find you. But spend that 15 minutes getting started. You probably won't finish your main priorities. Maybe you will. That'd be great. But start on your priorities, your tasks, the things that you're working on, and that's going to help you get some momentum behind those. And that momentum is easier to keep going in those 10 and 15-minute spots throughout your day. So if you're frustrated you're not accomplishing more, start at the beginning and start strong. That 15 minutes can extend to 30 minutes. It can extend to different 15-minute periods throughout the day so that you're making your priorities a priority. The second thing, if you're in an operation where you are putting out fires all of the time and there are emergencies that crop up that you can't foresee, what you can foresee is that something is going to come up. You don't know what it is, but likely something is going to come up. And so what you do is you actually schedule buffer periods. You schedule your emergencies is what I call it. So it may be a half an hour at 10:30 in the morning and a half an hour at 2:30 in the afternoon, where you've buffered that time. You're not going to be stuck in meetings. You're not going to be working on something else. You know that you're going to have something else come up. And that's when you can handle that emergency, or that's when you can get back on track with something that you were working on when that emergency pulled you away from. Vanjie, Gary, good to see you here. But put in a couple of buffer meetings, morning and afternoon, where you can get back on track. Now, hey, if there is no emergency that crops up, if you're not running around putting out fires that day, well then great. There's something else on your to-do list you can just plug into that time that's set aside. But plan and schedule your emergencies. You may not know what's going to go wrong, but you are likely have an idea that something is going to go wrong on a particular day. Mishu, good to see you here. So as people have jumped on here, if you have any questions, concerns, anything that's been bugging you this week, any leadership situations you'd just like to run by me, drop them down in the comments section. I handle everything out there. I'll give my 2 cents on something. And always, if you have some thoughts on something, by all means, drop down into the comments and give your thoughts on a particular issue. I don't pretend to have all of the answers here. Senzo, I'm going to handle one more and then I'll get to your question here. Thank you for providing it. The next one that comes in is, how do I get out of the habit of babysitting an otherwise wonderful employee? And this gets to accountability, and the term babysitting was used, and I really don't shy away from it. It's not a fun word to use. You're not supposed to use the term I'm babysitting my employees, but hey, sometimes that's the most descriptive. And in this environment, I feel okay using it. Jason, always good to see you here over in the UK. So when you're talking about babysitting, you're talking about expectations. And so I will go ahead and assume at this point that you've had the discussion in regards to expectations. Being clear that you want $5,000 in sales, that you are expecting 50 orders shipped a day or 100 invoices processed, or nothing to be in the queue at the end of the day. You've been clear on that. And if you haven't been clear on those expectations, you need to get clear on it, and you need to continue to talk about that expectation, okay? The other thing that I want to add in regards to this, and what cuts down a little bit on the babysitting, is to give the expectation, give the directive. Brianna, Anki, good to see you here, but follow up with a question. What do you think about that? Does that sound like a reasonable plan to you? Is there any problem that you foresee in meeting the deadline in regards to that? So you follow up with a question that they have to answer, and preferably, I know I used a couple of yes/no questions, but preferably you use some open-ended questions that you can get to with them. And what that does is that creates more buy-in for that expectation, because they've been brought into the process and they have to take ownership because they've said, yes, no, these are the concerns. And if they have concerns, then that gives you the opportunity to address them ahead of time before they become more of a problem down the road. And so that's the big thing when you talk babysitting, get clear on those expectations. But beyond that expectation is actually bringing them in and having a dialogue with them. What do you see is an issue with that? I noticed that you haven't met your sales goals all this week. Is there anything going on? What can I help you with? Are you doing add-on sales? What's the struggle with that? Just tell me. And as you have more and more of these conversations with your employees, you will get more back. A lot of the problems that come up with leadership is you take the correct course of action with something, but you're not persistent about it. You need to be able to change those behaviors, and that happens over time. It doesn't happen just at a snap of the fingers, or the first time you do something right, they just, whoa, they fall all over themselves to give you feedback on something. You do have to be consistent. And when you're consistent with it, you open those doors to getting more feedback and more dialogue. So if you want to stop babysitting your employees, and yeah, I'll go ahead and keep using that negative word there, then bring them into the discussion in regards to their expectations. They'll take more ownership and you will have to manage them less. All right, now before I go on with a couple of other questions I had offline here, I did want to tackle one that Senzo dropped in for us here. And it's, I'm struggling to land a new job. I have been working in one organization, in ICT, all my career life, and I feel like this prolongs my financial growth, or prolongs my financial. This is starting to depress me now. Any advice? So I don't know about the words prolong. A lot of times when you stay in an organization for a long period of time, they have structures as far as your raises are concerned. So I see this a lot with private coaching clients that I work with that have had 10, 12, 20-year, 30-year careers in some cases with the same organization, and they realize how far out of whack their salary is with the market, okay? And so what I do recommend is most organizations are not just going to give you a raise. I hate to say it, Senzo, I've never seen it, where you come in and you say, hey, you know what, my assistant manager is actually making more money than me. They rarely ever right-size that. And so it's fine to look outside the organization. But when you're looking to land a new job, this is my advice for everybody out there. This is my number one resume advice. Sure, go ahead and put your top 5 most important responsibilities down under each job that you have. But the most important thing isn't the responsibility. It is the accomplishments that you have. I'll say that again. The most important thing on your resume when you're looking for a new job, when you're tweaking it, isn't the responsibilities that you have, it's your accomplishments. The reason for that is there have been a ton of people that have been in your position before and have had the same responsibilities. And my question to you is, why are you any better than all of those? And that's what the accomplishments get to. So if you have revenue increases that have cropped up, if you've opened a new division, if you've innovated in any particular way, if you've restructured things, these are all accomplishments. Numbers are great. I've increased revenue 10%. I've decreased costs 15%. All of those numbers things are absolutely fantastic. But Senzo, if you're looking for another job, go ahead. Put your most important responsibilities down, but then put down the accomplishments as well. The other reason that putting the accomplishments on your resume is so important is one of the big hangups everybody has. I had the same hangup when I was interviewing for jobs, and that is I don't want to brag about myself. Most people don't want to brag. Some people have no problem with that at all, but most people don't want to brag. When you put your accomplishments on the resume, you don't have to brag, because it's right there. You've already put it there ahead of time. And that's what's going to help you move forward in the interview process and in the hiring process, is highlighting why you are special, because the interviewer immediately equates the past successes that you've had with the future successes you could have. And that puts you in a really powerful position. Now, talking again more generally, and I open this up with the I'll say sad fact, that if you stay in an organization longer, you tend to get penalized salary-wise for that, because they won't necessarily match the market that you're in. It doesn't mean that you don't bounce to another position in another company and then bounce back into the position later on. That's not abnormal at all. In this case, moving between jobs, if you have at least 2 years of tenure at each particular job, that's not going to raise any red flags. Going back to the change that's taken place in the marketplace for workers, where job hopping is less of an issue now than it's ever been before. And so I would encourage you, get clear, Senzo, on what it is that you want out of your career. What position would make you happy? What money would make you happy and make you interested in moving on? There's the security that you have, and I'm all for going into another position that allows you to continue to grow financially, but also skill set wise, and then bring those back into the current organization. Great question to start us out with, and if I can be of any other help, Senzo, definitely either drop into the comments or private message me on Facebook. I'm happy to help you out. Next question comes in from Edna, and I am caught up on questions, so if you have any questions, any situations in the workplace that have been bugging you the last week or that you're a little worried about as we head through this week, go ahead, drop them down in the comment section. I'm happy to go ahead and throw in my 2 cents on those. Edna says, how effective is a 360-degree appraisal process, and when is it necessary? Good question, Edna. And for those of you that don't know, a 360-degree review is where you take, say, a manager, and you have their peers, their boss, and their employees rate them or evaluate them in regards to certain criteria. That's the 360-degree view. So it may be that you have a manager that's fantastic with their employees, but they're a terrible coworker, and you struggle with them as their boss. This is what can bring that up. Any appraisal process, Edna, is only as good as the organization's willingness to take action on the feedback. I'll say that again. Any appraisal process or evaluation process of any employee is only as good as the organization's willingness to take action on that feedback. Okay? So I am a huge fan of 360-degree reviews. I love them because they give you more feedback. It's not just one directional from employee to manager or manager to employee. It is omnidirectional. I don't even know if that's the right word for it, but you get more feedback. You get feedback from your peers. You get feedback from your boss, all on how you can be better or where your successes lie. And that gives you information to help improve your career. And so I would look at this and ask yourself the question, if you are having your supervisory staff or your management staff go through 360-degree reviews, what are you willing to do to follow up with them to make sure that you're taking action on those? This is the problem with yearly reviews. Everybody laughs every time you see a yearly review because nobody does anything with that information until a year later when you review it. You need to have an action plan. What are we going to do this week? What are we going to do this month? What are we going to have accomplished by the first quarter? What are we going to accomplish the next quarter? You come up with a plan. And that's where appraisals and evaluations shine, is where you are willing as the leader, or if the organization is willing, to follow up. It isn't just a one-time instance. It is something that creates meetings and a plan moving forward for everybody in the organization so that everybody is approving. And so improving, not approving. So I hope that helps, Edna. It's really about action. This is the starting point. It isn't the start and finishing point. Those evaluations, that's what those are, is a starting point for an entire process that gets put in after the fact. Rob, good to see you here as well. So I'm caught up, so if you have any questions, drop them down into the comment section. I'll tackle them pretty much here in real time. I did have one other question that I received offline through email, and that was really almost more of a comment in regards to yesterday's session. We talked a lot yesterday about questioning and the power of questions for your employees, and it was a comment that I kind of wanted to follow up on here today, and that was that this particular individual managed with more of a coaching mindset and more of almost a sports team mindset where they were using case studies. It wasn't just questions. Hey, Andrea, good to see you here. It wasn't just questions that they would ask their employees. They would bring case studies into it and start bringing the thought process on. And so Harvard Business School is famous for the case study approach. Went through some of those in my business schooling, and they are good. And it goes along with that coaching mindset, because when you coach somebody in a sporting environment, there are always examples used. Usually very, examples that have occurred in the recent past. Show me how to do this, and then you evaluate it. Similarly, you can use that in the business environment or in the nonprofit environment, any organizational environment, where you're using case studies from other employees who have improved or gone through the same struggle, or you're using their current and most recent behavior as an example on how to improve. But the idea behind that is that we're not looking to meet expectations. It's one of the big powers of the coaching mindset that doesn't get talked about a lot, is that there's always areas for improvement. There's always areas for improvement in sporting environments. You can always be faster, quicker, stronger. It happens every time. World records don't tend to last more than 10 or 20 years at maximum. So it was a great kind of follow-up to a lot of the things that we were talking about yesterday. Yes, questions are hugely important, but examples are just about as important. That's what makes your feedback more powerful. That's what makes the results that you're going to get from any coaching sessions or any follow-ups that you have with evaluations that you have from employees. Glad you like that, Senzo. I'm glad. I hope that helps you out. And so that's what I really looked, as kind of a follow-up for everybody is, yes, do the coaching mentality, or use questioning, but then follow it up with that coaching and those examples, and that can be hugely powerful. So I appreciate that. I will let the person remain nameless because it came through a different channel there. Again, I am caught up here, so if you have any questions, drop them down in the comment section here. If you are coming to this late, if you're missing this particular live session, I have all of these sessions available in iTunes in podcast form and also over on SoundCloud. After I'm done filming this particular episode, I'll have those links up in the comment section there. I would love to have you part of the podcast community. That's something that's gaining a huge amount of traction. And again, it's just one of those things where you can have that, listening to it in the background, and be feeding your leadership mind some thoughts. It may not apply perfectly to what you're dealing with there, but it's something where you can find a way to apply the principle behind it, and it's something that you can kind of have in your back pocket should the situation ever arise or come up that addresses that particular area. So last call here for questions. If you have any, drop down into the comments, let me know. Otherwise, check out past episodes on iTunes or on SoundCloud, and I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Mentor Minutes. Glad I could help, and I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.